Right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar, A View from the Attacker, Part 2. See a Hacker Disable EDR and Launch Ransomware. My name's Daniel Brody. I'm the Senior Content Marketing Director at Illusive, and I'll be today's moderator. And before we get started, I just want to mention a few things, housekeeping related. So first, today's webinar is going to be accessible on demand after the event at illusive.com. And sorry about that. We'll have this available at illusive.com for sharing with your colleagues and rewatching. And also, we're going to email you a link after the main event. It will also contain the full unedited film of Alissa Knight carrying out her endpoint detection and response, or EDR incapacitation and ransomware attack launch, in all its glory. So you can take notes on her techniques because they mirror what attackers are doing right now. In addition, we'd love to hear from our viewers during today's presentation. So if you have a question for the speakers, please feel free to send it along through the Q&A box on the Zoom player. You can also tweet us on Twitter. We have a Twitter handle, EllusiveNW, that's at EllusiveNW, and we'll answer as many questions as we can at the end of the session. And if we don't have time to get to yours, we'll make sure to follow up with you individually afterwards. So without any further ado, I want to kick things off. So as you may remember, in our last View from the Attacker webinar, recovering hacker Alissa Knight tried to get around the deception technology Illusive makes and was unable to do so. Understandably, as a professional hacker, she's very mad. So she's out for revenge. A glance at the headlines will confirm that today's hackers are not intimidated by enterprises and their laundry list of cybersecurity solutions. Nay, they are designing targeted ransomware attacks aimed at completely evading or disabling the security agents that should be keeping them out. Alissa is using them as an inspiration, of all things, to launch a ransomware attack of her own on our cyber range, which is protected by both EDR and deception. So what are Alissa's bona fides as a hacker? Well, first of all, she was arrested as a teenager for attempting to hack the US government, and so obviously talented that she was recruited to do ethical hacking afterwards for corporate and government customers alike. And that includes the US intelligence community and the US Marine Corps at the Pentagon. And you know, those are no slouches when it comes to cybersecurity. Some of her most recent exploits involve hacking over 30 different vulnerable banking and mobile health apps and APIs in the space of a week. She also published the first book on hacking connected cars. Alissa, thank you for joining us today. I hope that by reviewing your frustrated hacking attempts the first time around, I'm not getting your dander up. No hard feelings.
Thanks, Stevie. Out of all of the events I do, no one comes close to your introduction. Thank you so much. Good morning, interwebs. It's great to be here. It was definitely an exciting engagement coming in for a second time around. Hopefully all of you will enjoy the video as much as I had fun making it. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and start the video and we'll get started. I do want to mention, as DB said, some of the text in the console screen may be difficult for some of you to see. So I just want to let you know the entire video of my screen share without the narration from this webinar will be posted live. I know a lot of you are probably here to learn more about post-exploitation in a Windows domain. This is a great way for you to learn that. So this is an awesome teaching moment for a lot of you beyond just deception or disabling and evading EDR. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and get started. Enjoy the show. So a couple years ago, I was just trying to make ends meet. I was making $125,000 a year working in Silicon Valley, really working to be able to live. And the company that I was working for was hacked, and it was a ransomware group. We had no backups, of course, and the company ended up paying the ransom. In this case, the ransomware group got $10 million for a decryption key that we needed to be able to decrypt our data. So I thought to myself, what am I doing? I could be making that kind of money. So I decided that it was time for a change. So I sold all my stuff, jumped on a plane, and moved to Kiev. So I live here now. I make about $10–15 million every few months, and I have no troubles in the world.
Making it rain.
This is really a victimless crime. I don't target elderly and steal people's retirement funds. I target greedy corporations that deserve it. They frankly deserve it. They don't back up their data. They're stealing money from everyone anyway, so we're just stealing it back. I'm like Robin Hood, except I don't give the money away to the needy, I keep it.
Yeah, baby.
I drive around in a $15 million Bugatti.
That is a $15 million car.
Nothing keeps me up at night. I have no problems with what I do. I'm not hurting anyone. This is my life now. My favorite CISO is the CISO that thinks that EDR is the silver bullet to security. That all they need on their endpoints to protect them is EDR. What they don't know is how easy it is to disable it. I was contacted by an employee for a company that wanted to sell me her credentials. She was up to her neck in debt, pretty much me back in Silicon Valley, needed help financially. So we offered her $10 million for her username and password, and she gave it to us. Now I'm gonna show you what happens when an inside employee gives her credentials to us in exchange for money. And all you have is EDR to protect yourself. I'm gonna show you how easy it is to disable it if I run into it on that network. So let's get started. So EDR starts up when Windows starts, and this is controlled from within the registry. Now, in the services control panel, you can attempt to go in there and manually stop the EDR service, and any good EDR is going to prevent you from being able to do that. The EDR is also going to prevent you from doing something like trying to go into the task manager and dumping LSAS to a dump file. Along with other protections, the EDR should prevent you from being able to do that. Now, there's a vulnerability that was discovered in one particular EDR vendor that allowed you to be able to go into the registry and change the startup value to 4 for start reg dword. And by setting that value to 4, it prevents the EDR from starting when Windows starts, effectively disabling the EDR. Now again, this vulnerability has since been fixed by the EDR company, but by default, some EDR vendors will have that monitoring of the registry for unauthorized changes off by default. So my recommendation to you is to go into your EDR policy, no matter what EDR you're using, and ensure that unauthorized modifications to the registry is not turned off, that you're monitoring for unauthorized changes to your registry file. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to show you how quick and easy it is to disable EDR when this isn't being monitored for. Here I'm in the services control panel, and I'm going to right click on this service for the EDR and attempt to manually stop it. Here you can see the ability for me to do that has been denied. Of course, I shouldn't be able to do this. And now in Task Manager, I'm going to attempt to manually end the process for the EDR, and it should prevent me from being able to do that.
And again, we're going to be making this available after the webinar for you guys to be able to watch.
Also, in that previous shot, some of it was redacted too,
right,
to make it not clear who we're talking about specifically.
HK local machine, go under system.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Les. Thanks, Justin, Dave.
Subfolder in there called current control set. We're going to click on that. And within current control set, we're going to go ahead and click on service.
Yeah, you guys are going to see some black boxes that says redacted. It's because we obviously didn't want to out the EDR vendor that I'm disabling and evading.
Value to 4 instead of those redacted boxes will go away here in a minute. And we're going to change the start key for the other services that the EDR uses. And we're going to change that start value from 3 to 4. Same with this service. We're going to change the start value to 4. And we're going to go ahead, and now that those changes have been made, I'm going to go ahead and restart Windows. For those of you who are concerned about the volume level, I think it's because I'm sharing it over Zoom. Indicator of compromise, but we're going to offer this for download after the webinar. You have much bigger problems than your server rebooting when it wasn't supposed to. I'm going to go ahead and load up the services control panel again, and we should see that the EDR failed to start or was disabled.
Yeah, in some cases that reboot could be, you know, Patch Tuesday, you know, a scheduled reboot. So it's not always an unexpected event as well.
So again, yeah, Sven, you make a good point. If any of you are viewing this through your web browser instead of the Zoom client, that may be a resolution issue. That's probably what you guys are seeing right now. This is a 4K video. So it's going to be, again, available for you guys to download later. The redacted boxes are now gone. So hopefully you guys should get the rest of it. Now we can take that dump file and we're going to go ahead and load that into Mimikatz and grab those credentials. Yeah, I was in the registry, Anonymous. That was a registry edit on the start value. To disable EDR on the victim host, I was able to dump LSAS to a file. And I went ahead and uploaded that dump file to a staging server that I have. And here in this window on the right hand side, you'll see that I downloaded the memory dump file via SFTP to my staging server. And I'm going to go ahead and now load Mimikatz and run that dump file through Mimikatz in hopes of carving usable credentials out of that dump file. Hopefully domain administrator credentials. All right, guys and girls, this is where it gets exciting. Come on. Hopefully you're sitting down. Also, I'm going to post my entire command line history for you guys and girls on the video. So we'll make this available as and there you go, a list of commands that I typed. We were successful in carving credentials out of that dump file. Okay, so I have downloaded my ransomware executable to the host where I found the data that I want to lock and leak from this victim. I'm going to go ahead and execute that now, and it will encrypt that folder of files. And there we go.
This is how you afford a Bugatti, huh?
Yeah. And that's what happens when a greedy corporation relies just on EDR to protect its endpoints. Okay, so what happens when I'm on a machine and EDR can't be disabled? Because I can't do it through the previous technique that I mentioned earlier within the registry. There are ways to actually evade an EDR solution, not just disable it. The technique that I use to evade EDR is a technique that leverages WER-fault. What WER-fault stands for is Windows Error Reporting Fault. And what WER-fault does is it basically generates error reports for both Windows 10 as well as Windows applications. And leveraging WER-fault, we can actually cause LSAS to dump memory to that dump file that we created before after disabling EDR. But because we can't disable EDR, we can't just go into the task manager and dump LSAS again. So we need to leave the EDR tool running. There's two techniques that I'm going to actually show you. So one is actually adding a firewall rule to Windows that prevents the EDR from communicating an alert to the server. And then once we do that, we can go ahead and use Werfault to do a silent process exit on LSAS to dump memory from LSAS to that memory dump file. So let's go ahead and get started.
This is actually pretty cool. I don't know if any of you have tried this, but you'll see a tool in here that I'm using to employ this attack.
All we simply do is first, I want to add the firewall rule to Windows to prevent the EDR from reporting the alert of me doing this to the central server. So the Security Operations Center on this network is none the wiser if they're monitoring the EDR tool.
And Rick, I'm sure you want to jump in here on Werfault. If you want, I'll pause the video after I show this attack.
No, you're good. We'll let this roll through.
Settings.
Okay. This is actually pretty cool, everyone. What I'm doing here is I'm modifying the Windows Firewall outbound rules to prevent the EDR from being able to report the alert about what I'm about to do.
And I'm going to say new rule. And we're going to specify program as the firewall rule, and the program path I'm just going to go ahead and put in system. And I'm going to say block the connection on domain private and public, and I'm going to go ahead and call this block EDR alerts.
For obvious reasons, I couldn't show a screenshot of the console for the EDR to show that there were no alerts when I performed this attack. But I can assure you that was the case. I could definitely recommend if you have an EDR to try this.
I'm going to go ahead and list all of
we, of course, didn't want to
find out what the process ID of LSAS
put the vendor out there.
Every service running in an operating system is going to run as a process, which has an associated PID or process ID. We need to find that process ID for LSAS in order to be able to leverage the silent process exit technique.
It's also not necessarily unique to any one
vendor.
vendor
I'm just going to use
right?
the command task list.
Correct.
And I'm going to pipe that through find. And I'm going to look for LSAS in that process tree. So we see that LSAS is actually running as PID 680, and that's all we need.
All right, everyone, this is using Werfault to actually silent process kill LSAS for a dump of memory.
Now, what it's trying to do is actually dump PID 680 in order to create that memory dump file. Now, the one thing about this tool I can tell you is, number one, I've had to actually run it multiple times when it failed the first time. And then secondly, once that happens and it's successful, it will actually brick the machine. So in every single instance where I've used this on a network that I've compromised, this has made the machine unresponsive, meaning that I've bricked the machine. Here we see that looks like it's failing to dump that memory file. So we're going to go ahead and run it again. And it looks like the process completed. Now, if we do another directory listing here, we can see that there's a 50 meg memory dump file in this directory. And then that's when we can take that memory dump file and actually put that within Mimikatz to extract those credentials. So that's all you do. So just to review the steps here, I added the outbound firewall rule for system, preventing the EDR from being able to communicate alerts outbound. And now I've gone ahead and listed the processes running on the machine, found that LSAS was running as PID 680, and I used our silent process tool to kill that process so LSAS could dump that memory to a dump file. Now, one of the things that I'm going to show you is I just as I suspected, and every time I've run this, it did brick the machine. So I'm clicking on the start menu here, and I'm just going to go ahead and type in CMD, and you can see that the start menu is actually unresponsive. It looks like the search bar is also gone. That was sitting right here. So this machine is pretty borked. That's a technical term. So there's really nothing more we can do here. If I hit the power button, it doesn't seem to even be responding to that. So I can't.
This is a great little DOS attack.
Someone is going to have to actually do a forced reset of this machine. Now that we've bricked this machine, I have my memory dump file. I can then transfer that to my staging server where I have Mimikatz running, and then just carve through that dump file to find all of the credentials. And that's really all you do. So I'm going to go ahead and log off this machine,
It's already unresponsive. I really can't do anything on it. I really want to get off of this network so I don't show up in anything, and probably delete the log files.
So yeah, good point here before we continue. So Philip, you asked a great question. So the ATO was in the account takeover for my foothold on the system. I was a local admin. You guys, obviously, in modifying the outbound firewall rules and spawning the PS exec system shell, you're obviously going to have a problem. And if you're not local admin, as far as whether or not the system was patched, Rick, can you comment on that? Do you know if that Windows 10 machine was running all the latest service packs?
Yeah, it was patched. Hardened is relative. I mean, we didn't go, full bore. So, I think, the real point there is that, if it's not the first place that an attacker lands, if they can move laterally, if they can get access, and I think what you're going to, show a little bit, we kind of talked about having that, potential insider, et cetera. There are a number of other techniques that can be used to elevate privilege. And then, once you have privilege, then you can go further. So there's a number of different aspects to this. It may not be the first thing that an attacker can do when they land, when they land on the endpoint. Obviously, we're not going to have you guys watch Alissa, work through 2 weeks of trying to gain elevated privilege.
Oh, and to expound on what Rick said, once you have a foothold on a system, as many of you probably are aware, is I'm sure out of all the people here, there's some penetration testers. It's relatively easy to up your privilege level on a Windows machine once you've already got a shell. Through named pipe or any other local exploit to be able to up to local admin and then find domain admin. So, but yes, at this point, I was already local admin.
So we had so much fun yesterday in the attack of disabling and evading EDR that I've come back for a second round in an attempt to go after more endpoints and potentially
you had
more
fun.
data.
You bricked one of my boxes and you encrypted the files on
where I am now at this point is I have another beachhead on the network using the same credentials that we bought.
Took you like 15 minutes to reboot that box, dude.
And walk through the same kill chain as the other day and see what we get.
So here I'm coming back for day 2.
Okay, so
more
on
fun.
Our beachhead, I've gone ahead and downloaded my toolkit from my staging server in the Azure cloud that you saw me use in the previous attack. I've placed that in my desktop under toolkit. I have a number of tools here. I have CrackMap exec, which is a great run and gun tool for mapping out the network, using credentials that we've captured from the LSAS dump, things like that. So it basically just sprays the network with creds that we have. It also attempts null sessions. We also have some other items in here. I have the night.exe backdoor, which basically just does a reverse tunnel out to my machine in my staging server on the internet. I also have Mimikatz on here, Process Hacker, which you saw me using the
CrackMap exec is actually a really cool tool if none of you have used it. Go download it. It's a free download. You can find it on GitHub along with these other tools.
So these are this is the typical tool chest that I use whenever I get a foothold on a network and I'm ready to lock and leak the victim. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is, of course, grab a dump from this machine. This is a new host that we have a beachhead on, and we want to carve all of the credentials out of memory and do a dump from LSAS. So let's go ahead and do that.
And so for those of you who see that night.exe, it's just a backdoor binary that I created that does a reverse shell back out to the internet to my staging server from my victim host.
For system,
it's just some interpreter binary.
And I'm just going to run that as CMD. And I have a PS exec command shell running a system.
You can tell how somber I sound, how late it was when I was filming this. It was like super late. I think it was like midnight or 1 a.m.
Now, as I mentioned, I'm using Mimikatz to carve credentials out of memory. So there's a little bit of a shortcut here. This is a command line that I use. It basically just, it gets us out of interactive mode from within Mimikatz, and it just puts everything in one single command line and then outputs that to a text file. And then I'm just going to call that mimikatz.out. And of course, it helps if you're in the right directory. Clear evidence that it was really late. I was in the wrong directory. At least it wasn't RM. RM star. Okay, we should have our out file now. Looks like we do, and that's about 13 megs in size. So if we type that out. All right, awesome. It looks like we have a successful dump from LSAS of all the credentials that are currently in the Hive. So I've got this list of usernames and passwords. I've gone ahead and let's just go ahead and try some of these. It looks like we have a good password recovery for ginger.knowles with the password of warwick654. Now it's telling us, it's giving us a new machine, a new endpoint called EP0438. So we can try that, but I prefer to. So I just want to respond to this question. I want to make this abundantly clear for those of you who are joining late. I did not actually buy credentials from an employee at a company. This is all make-believe. I'm not an actual real ransomware gang member.
You don't live in the Ukraine.
Living in Ukraine, and I don't drive a real Bugatti. Though I do drive a Tesla. No, I don't drive a Bugatti. So this is all just, this is a film, but we're showing the post-exploitation tactics and techniques of a ransomware gang, lock and leak, as well as disabling and evading EDR. CrackMap. And CrackMap, again, is the run and gun tool that I like to use for spraying the network and looking for other potential endpoints that we can successfully authenticate with. So we've got this Ginger Knowles username and password. Let's go ahead and give that a shot and see what we can connect to. So it's going ahead and it's trying everything in the entire subnet. This is the whole class C for the machine that I'm on, with the username and the password being specified. It looks like we have a successful connection to a 10.160.5.48 machine with that same username and password. Let's go ahead and do a lookup on that and see what its host name is. I wonder if it's that EP machine that we saw earlier. Doesn't look like we have a DNS entry. Okay, that's weird. You would expect a DNS entry in a corporate network. Let's go and give it a shot.
That is
anyway.
weird, because there should have been one.
So I'm going to attempt to.
Yeah, you know what? The DNS request actually timed out, so it looks like maybe the DNS server just wasn't configured. When I came back and looked at the video again, I was like, oh, it actually timed out. It just didn't get a response. I don't know. Maybe the DNS service wasn't running.
Looks like we have a good connect.
Possible.
I don't know where you guys were serving DNS from.
We have a password of Warwick 654. It's weird. CrackMap is telling us that it can successfully log in. Why can't I authenticate? Maybe I mistyped it.
Maybe.
This is where it got really frustrating.
Shit.
Rick, I'm sure you've got a little bit of a tale to tell on this one.
Deception.
Yeah. So
They might be using.
go ahead and let it roll for just a little bit longer, because I think you're gonna play with these a little bit more, and then we'll talk a little bit about what's going on.
All right, we have a successful connect. Maybe that.
Yeah, for those of you who haven't used CrackMap before, it's incredibly powerful. Once you get a set of credentials on a beachhead in a network, carve stuff out of from out of memory, the SAM Hive, whatever. Once you have those credentials, you can use CrackMap to pretty much spray the entire network with those creds, and it will check every machine if you have the ability to log into it with those same credentials.
You know, we had another.
So it's a great run and gun tool.
Let's try this
doing that.
Dan.Jennings.
You remember Dan from the last video, don't you, Alissa?
I do. I think Dan Jennings was decoy credentials, right?
He was a domain admin.
Oh, was it? Dan Jennings was? Yeah, but a fake one or a real one?
This is really
yeah, no, he was.
You can neither confirm nor deny. Oh, okay.
He was real in that environment.
Gabriel.shear. Let's try that.
Yeah, but the reason why the authentication didn't work was because I was trying to log into a decoy host, right? Had I actually used Dan Jennings creds on a real host, it should have worked, right?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
So in this case, Dan is actually a deception in this environment.
Let me try.
Got it.
I'll show you what. So. But I know you're going through and taking another look at how you can scan the environment with Gabriel there.
Exact machine.
Yeah. I'm sure I lit up like a Christmas tree at this point.
Yeah, and it's interesting because Gabriel is actually a domain admin.
Gabriel is. Oh, it's not a pair of decoy credentials?
Not in this case. Well, it depends on where you found it.
Yeah.
Right. So.
Yep.
But one of the interesting things here is that you're following.
It looks like this was
a standard.
I thought it would.
This is standard playbook, right? Find credentials, find
credentials
data,
work. We're clearly
and then leverage that to be able to move laterally.
Memory. We did this through an LSS dump. For some reason, these usernames and passwords don't seem to be working. I'm even wondering if these are real hosts. Let me see what we have in network neighborhood. Here's that 0438 machine. All right, it looks like we have some. Let's just try EP0438.
Yeah, so now you're accessing the patents directory. So maybe, Alissa, it might be instructive for folks if we kind of pause this for a second. And you were mentioning lighting up like a Christmas tree.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it's instructive for me to show folks what I'm seeing on the blue team side here on the Illusive console, because in this environment here, unlike the one you were playing with yesterday, this one actually has Illusive in deployed in the environment. So you're seeing some things intentionally because of the way that we've structured the environment. So tell you what, why don't you stop sharing for a second? I'm gonna I'll bounce over to the console just to give folks a quick look at what what things look like, right? So this is what the lab actually looks like. It's actually not very big. And we did that intentionally. We didn't, we wanted for time, brevity's sake, right? And what you're seeing is everything's color coded. So these are, whether they are share connections, RDP in the pink, web connections, etc. And these are SMB connections in the green here. But this is the way Alissa sees the world. So, here's EP0354, CISSRv5, where she saw data earlier, CISSRv6, and this is EP1052, which is her beachhead. So you can see from here all the different connections that EP1052 has. But what she doesn't see is this view. Everything orange is a deception. So now when I look at the connections from EP1052, what I'm seeing is that a lot of the data that she sees, CISSRv6 is a deceptive host, EP0438 that she was just looking at is a deception, as well as, corp files, one of the shares, those are all deceptive data. And what it's basically, when she's interacting with all of this data, it's now showing me that, let's just look at the ones here. I'm basically seeing all of her interactions. So here's the original RDP logins that we saw when she was logging in with Ginger Knowles. some failed logins here as Ginger Knowles, Dan Jennings, Gabriel Shear. So as she was trying different credentials, we were able to see that that data. Here's the Gabriel login. We're even getting desktop screenshots here, right? So I can see this is exactly what we were just seeing in the video, where she was, credentials did not work, logging in as Gabriel Shear, right? So we're able to actually see what she's doing, and that helps the incident response team. But it also do things like an analysis here, and this is, especially for a level 1 triage, right? Source and destination information, but more importantly, potential reconnaissance commands, right? We're seeing NS lookup, PS exec. We can see some of the NS lookups that were going on. But then also we're seeing there's RDP connections in. There's an RDP connection from, I'm assuming this is your system RDP'd in here at the 17473, Alissa. So we can actually see that there is a connection from outside of this lab network that's RDP'd into this machine. And then she was talking about her command prompts. We can actually see the command history here. So if I look at the data that we've got, here's some of the different command prompts here, and here's her NS lookups and the data that came back from those. They were timing out. And
yeah, that screenshot was actually pretty cool. The fact that you can actually view a screenshot.
Her interpreter binary, her reverse shell. I can see her run that, and here's the PS exec where it created the other system command. So I'm able to see that detail, and that and all the way through the next couple of RDP she accessed the shares, and then here's where she actually accessed patents. And I can see the details of what she was actually going into. She was going into patents.desktop. So there's a lot of different aspects to this that I can see in the system, and it gives me that that really detailed view, and it's done automatically as she's doing things. When it sets off an alert, we're gathering this telemetry from that endpoint to give you basically, I'm getting the view, desktop screenshot here. This is the view over Alissa's shoulder effectively as she's going through and seeing this. Here's exactly where we paused, excuse me, paused the video. She's looking at patents here, and then, attempting to connect into W0438. So just want to kind of give, folks an understanding of, while she's walking through this stuff, what we're seeing on the other side of the coin, why, we're seeing this data, available to us. And I'll turn it back to you in the video there, Alissa.
Cool beans.
So I guess essentially that was the view from the defender, let's say.
Correct.
How is that even possible? I see the network neighborhood, but the password isn't working. The frustration level is starting to rise. We have a shared folder here, finance.
I'm not happy until you're swearing at the screen.
Oh, the swear words are coming. That's day 3. Let me try. What is happening? I'm like, maybe I got the domain wrong. Maybe the domain's wrong.
That's exactly what's going on. All right. Well, it doesn't look like any of my other tools to pivot around the network and harvest files is going to work. It looks like the only thing we're just stuck on this host that we have, which doesn't seem to actually have anything on it. Well, I don't think there's really anything left we can do. To recap, I was successful in carving credentials out of memory on the beachhead we had. We then fed those into our tools, and according to those tools, they were able to successfully authenticate. But when we actually attempted to pivot laterally and begin connecting to other endpoints with those working credentials, they all of a sudden stopped working, which tells me that the hosts were either not real, credentials were not real, or all of the above. So I'm going to scrape my losses and call it a day and just take the one win that I have from yesterday and be on my way. So I woke up
this
today
is an interesting point, Alyssa, before we go any further.
Way to
attackers don't get a lot of surprise. I mean, you're probably better versed to comment on this than I am, but attackers generally don't get a lot of surprises, right? They know where data is. Windows architecturally, the data is in the places it is because of the way Windows is designed, right? And the tools do what they do. And given the right, I mean, assuming you put in the right data, the right credentials, things like that, the tools do what they do, and they gather the data from where they gather the data, which is the normal places, right? And generally, when you're in an offensive role, you can trust that data because, the tools are gathering it from the normal places, right?
Yeah, I mean, every penetration tester has her own modus operandi for how she performs pen testing, her own set of tools, her own exploits that she trusts. But when you get to a point where you're disrupting that decision-making process and the attacker can't even trust her own tools, that you get to a different place psychologically. It's almost like psyops, right? It's almost like psyops against the attacker. Because you're basically disrupting that entire decision-making process for that adversary in that engagement. My revenge against that company that wasted my time yesterday, installed deception technology preventing me from being able to move around within the network. How do I get them back for wasting my time? And then I thought, well, I remember there being a network share to their corporate documents folder from my beachhead. I think eye for an eye. Let's waste their time. I'm going to run my ransomware encrypt from my beachhead and just encrypt the entire network share. So follow along with me while we have a little fun.
You're just unhappy you didn't get gas.
I'm super pissed at that point.
So it looks like X-Drive is a mapped.
There goes that second Bugatti.
Yeah, no kidding.
Corporate documents. This actually looks like a real machine. And there's a contracts and some insurance folders in here. This has to be worth something to them. So screw it. Let's just encrypt the entire network share. Wait, what's this? What the hell is .contracts?
So not exactly, again, it's one of those scenarios where you're not exactly getting the
this isn't one of those folders.
The output that you're expecting, right?
Damn it. Oh my god, the encryptor isn't even working? What the hell is this? You gotta be kidding me.
So you want to pause it there for a second? I'll explain to folks what just happened behind the scenes and why you're not happy with this again.
Sure.
So one of the things that Illusive also has in play in this environment is Ransomware Guard. And so when we see, so basically that environment that you just saw has in it a synthetic file sync that basically will keep that ransomware tool that she was running, her encryptor, busy for a while. And we'll see that, we can see that here. There was, going through the shares path enumeration. And we can see that there was data being run. They were actually looking at, enumerating through the share, and a lot of the ransomware will do that. They're looking for either specific types of files. Some of them encrypt specific files, others just encrypt in a blanket fashion. And then we actually went through, and I think it's just after that, we basically blocked the ransomware, the encryptor, and we're basically saying, hey, you got through about 21 files of this sync that we've got running there to keep it busy, to keep it from encrypting anything that is actually valuable. So we kind of put it down a maze. And then we've been able to identify that the ransomware.exe was running in, its PID was 3316, and we're able to go through and block that ransomware attempt so that it can't go any further from that environment. So again, just a little bit of extra protection should there be, a point where where a malicious actor gets beyond that initial, lateral movement phase, and it is somehow either gets directly to a crown jewel, or like in this case is starting to just say, hey, I'll just encrypt anything I find. I'm not going to be overly picky. There's another layer of protection there that can basically keep that busy while the responders can react to it.
Yeah, I think on the third attempt, your guys' product actually blocked my process, right? Like I remember at one point my process got stuck.
Yep. Yeah, and that's basically what's happening is we're basically making it so that that process, we're going back to that endpoint and saying, hey, we want to stop. We want to block this process from running. So, again, it allows for that extra layer of protection should it be, should people get to it. But the reality is that first aspect of what you were doing on day 2 with the lateral movement and detecting that is, 90% of, stopping human operated ransomware, because they're all operating in that, in that mode of move laterally until you gain control of the network before you then, encrypt the entirety of it. So, I just wanted to show folks, that we are alerting on this, this information, and of course, this, ransomware access attempt makes this critical severity, so we're able to, capture that data. And again, we're capturing data off of the endpoint to see, what is she actually running in the environment, and we can see we've got our encryptor running in the background, over here. That was actually for the share. Let's block. So again, just some of that data that we're able to see, and I think it's it's important for the the responders on the that are looking at this thing to say, hey, we do have a recourse when this is happening.
Cool. Thanks, Rick. I'm going to go ahead and play the rest of the video.
Yeah.
Try it again. It's some kind of sinkhole. You gotta be kidding me. I can't even lock any files from my beachhead. What a waste of time. Looks like my encryptor even froze. Never mind. Well, that was a complete waste of time. What a shitty way to end my week. I'm out.
1, 2, 3, 4. Close your.
That is how we know you're mad. When the vulgarity
Four-letter
is
word.
fine.
That's what you
Mic drop.
credits.
So before we get to the Q&A, because I know we have a couple minutes here, I want to make sure we answer as many of the questions as we can. I just want to point out that on Illusive.com right now, that we have a game-like experiential demo environment that basically recreates this dynamic. It's sort of like a video game type setup where you can actually be the attacker, like Alissa Knight. You attempt to move laterally from endpoint to endpoint with the goal of launching a ransomware attack while trying to avoid elusive deceptions. And so if you think you can beat elusive deception, we want to see you try. Head on over to Illusive.com. It's right at the top of our homepage. It's also under the resources in the menu. It says Experiential Demo. We'll send you a link to it as well in our follow-up communications. But just before we get to any Q&A, wanted to make sure you guys try it out. It really does recreate, the value that Illusive provides with a video game-like atmosphere. So definitely go over to Illusive.com and check that out.
Yeah, and DB, one thing that I want to let everyone know about is I'm actually going to be publishing my score on that. So I'm going to actually challenge a lot of you to a competition to see if you can beat my score. It's a really cool game. I have to tell you, it's free. There's no cost to do it. And I'm going to start publishing my score and opening it up for a competition, see if anyone can beat me. But it's a lot of fun. You got to definitely check it out. It gives you the same sort of kind of beachhead in a virtual environment. If any of you read those Choose Your Own Adventure books when you were a kid, just like me, it's kind of like Choose Your Own Adventure. You basically select where you pivot to laterally, what you think is a real machine versus a deceptive machine. It's a lot of fun. You try and choose which credentials you think are real versus deception. It's a lot of fun. So let's see what kind of score you can get and if you can beat me in that score.
All right. Yeah, that'll be fun to see. Even for people like us who are working with deception all the time, we're getting stymied in this experiential demo too. And so, we know to expect deception and we're still getting frustrated by deception. So, try your chances. Let's see. I got a question right here. And so I guess it's probably for you, Alissa. Who's behind these attacks in your experience, the gangs and such that are doing these kinds of ransomware attacks right now, and what makes them so effective? I mean, you struggled here, but we obviously are looking at the headlines and seeing, all these different attacks that are actually successful. You've written some white papers for us about these sorts of attackers. What are they doing and why are they able to get so much success in their attempts?
Yeah, it's a great question, DB. So I'm going to actually fall on my own sword here. So in a post on LinkedIn, I actually commented on this very question and said, hey, look, you know what? That's what these companies get for not backing up. Okay, yes, companies should be backing up their data. But the reason that these are so effective, especially in real-time environments like a hospital, you're generating data every second, right? In some cases, hundreds, thousands of data, new or modified data every second, every minute. How do you keep up with that with backups, right? So if I hit a hospital and 300 new patients have been admitted into the hospital since backups were last run, and I encrypt that data, you tell me who's at fault there, right? It's going to be really difficult for me to fault the hospital just because they are in such a real-time environment. Really, any organization as it relates to backups. Now, there's other security controls that you can obviously implement to help here besides backups. Illusive obviously being one of them. But one of the things I can tell you is, in addition to penetration testing, a lot of you who follow me know me as an API penetration tester. I hack connected cars. And one thing that I also do is a lot of incident response and forensics. The ones perpetrating a lot of these attacks that I'm investigating are Eastern European, coming out of Ukraine, like Dnipropetrovsk or Kiev, or Russia. And so a lot of them are originating from Eastern Europe. A lot of them, it's a majority of them, I'd say more than 60% of them are because of account takeover. So so that was a big reason why we chose that as the attack vector in this exercise, was the fact that ATO, or account takeover, and credential stuffing is such a popular mode of entry for a lot of these ransomware gangs. that it made the most sense to use. So I'd say that that's a big attack vector entry point is compromised passwords and organizations not fricking using multi-factor authentication. It's 2021. Why are you not turning on MFA? It's, you know, it's a free option in an M365. You know, you've got all these other solutions that can give you MFA. Compromised passwords in 2021 shouldn't be a thing. I'm sorry, I may piss off some of you. Some of you may disagree, but you know, you could try and key my car, but you know, I just think it's a pervasive problem that at the very low hanging fruit can be solved with MFA.
Yeah, I mean, don't key any Bugattis.
Yeah, not my.
No, you see all the things that you did today on this webinar, and you know, a lot of attacks that are successful don't even need to go that far. You know, you're almost beyond the level.
I came back multiple days.
Yeah, I mean the simplicity of some of the things that are allowed to happen just because there's not enough basic security in place. It's really frustrating.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and a lot of things, like for example, one of the things that I wanted to demonstrate in this is a takeaway for all of you is there is no silver bullet to security. Organizations should not be relying solely on EDR for their endpoint security. It should be like layers of an onion where you find out first what it is you're trying to protect and build layers of security controls around it, like layers of an onion. Today, there's no such thing as a castle and moat. The castle is gone, the moat is gone. Data is everywhere. You can't control it. You know, it's very porous. It's, you know, so one of the things that I would recommend is, you know, first try and figure out what it is you're trying to protect and implement layers of security controls around that. You've got your DLP, you've got insider threat management tools, you've got all these other solutions, deception technology. You've got all of these things to try and make it increasingly more difficult for me as the adversary to do it so easily and quickly. Much to DB's point, do you see how fast I was able to get a beachhead and then lock and leak? I mean, I ran, you know, within, I'd say 5 minutes, I had ransomware.exe run. I was able to block the outbound firewall rule to prevent the EDR from communicating out. I was able to disable it. I was able to get around it. In the case that I couldn't disable it, I was able to evade it. There's so many different things you can do where it would be the biggest mistake you can make is to rely on a single security control for your endpoint security, especially today in post-pandemic world where everyone is working from home and everyone is working everywhere. You need to put security controls everywhere.
All right. And on that note, I think we've covered most of the questions. If we didn't get to yours, we'll make sure to contact you after the webinar, get you an answer. We're at the top of the hour now. So just want to make sure to thank everyone on the panel. Thank you, Alissa. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, everybody who attended today's webinar. And so as I mentioned earlier, we're going to email you a copy of this webinar in particular. We're going to send you a copy of the high definition original attack video that Alissa made, you know, the unadulterated, you know, hour-long full attack so you can study it and take notes. And we'll also send you a link to that experiential demo that we've developed that gives you a game-like atmosphere of what Illusive does, and you can see if you can beat deception yourself. We also have another upcoming webinar coming on July 28th. We're going to do more of a where the rubber meets the road and go really deep on how the Illusive Active Defense Suite stops ransomware attacks. And we'll really show you a wide variety of the telemetry that you can collect from it about in-progress attacker activity. So thank you. Look out for that email that we're going to send afterwards. And thanks for attending today. Thanks to our panelists. Until next time, stay safe.
Thank you, everyone. And that video is definitely going to be in 4K, so it'll be a lot easier to see. And definitely follow me on YouTube, Twitter, and LinkedIn for more awesome content.
Thanks, Alissa. See you guys soon.
Thanks, everyone.